More details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. We also have here federal government, National Assembly meet aggrieved doctors ahead of planned protest today. And that is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. And we have here that the federal government held a closed-door meeting with executives of the National Association of Resident Doctors to avert a proposed nationwide protest and picketing of the Federal Ministry of Health and other government institutions. And that, okay, all right, and that is, though the outcome of the meeting was sketchy, but NARD President Innocent Oji said the special advisor to the President on Health, Dr. Salma Anaskolo, led the government team during the talks. Although he said another meeting with the leadership of the National Assembly was in view, adding that details of both would be disclosed later by yesterday. Let's not forget that on Saturday evening, the National Association of Resident Doctors threatened to embark on daily peaceful protests and picketing of the Federal Ministry of Health, the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation, and all federal and state tertiary health institutions nationwide with effect from 10 a.m. today. So as it is now, although the Federal Ministry of Health has directed a no work, no pay policy against the strike, but then Fuhad, I just want to ask this question, why it's whenever, institutions like this come up with some grievances and trying to press home demands, why is it, why does it become tedious on the part of the federal government to rise and take action, do something where we don't have, because this is a very crucial sector, the health sector, very, very important frontline, workers they are. So why do we have, tedious negotiation talks with our federal government every time when it comes to, issues like this?
Well, the question is this, Sandra, or maybe I should address it this way. How important are these sectors to this set of leaders or to the political class? I keep saying it, the reason why any government would allow these doctors to go on strike of any kind, it's probably because they don't use those facilities. You understand what I'm saying? They and their cronies, their family members don't use those facilities. We're talking about public health institutions, and I'm sure a lot of them don't even go to those hospitals. They have their own private institutions here that they patronize, and a lot of them have visas to different countries of the world, where they go for different medical tourism. Some of them are smaller as Qatar is, cold. They fly out to treat it. So that's why they would sit back and see our doctors go on strike without responding immediately. It's supposed to be an emergency. In fact, if doctors are to go on strike, it is important. If the government decides to shut down to address that singular issue, it is worth it. Because we are talking about the lives of the people. If you understand what I'm saying, Sandra. So, just to answer your question, the reason why you see the government would drag in, on issues of doctors going on strike without them responding immediately is because they don't use those facilities. If they use it, it will become a priority and they will not even allow doctors go on strike for 24 hours. Be that as it may, it is good that the National Assembly has stepped in. The senators are meeting with the doctors. Some of the federal government delegations are also meeting with them. We have talks going on. But I actually want to appeal to the doctors that, again, they have to look at the, general interest of the people, the poor people, the ordinary people who use those facilities, the vulnerable Nigerians who use those facilities. Some of them have, serious ailments that they are dealing with. They need to see doctors. They need to see their physicians. Some of them are life-threatening ailments that doctors need to attend to immediately. So we need to appeal to the doctors again to look at, the interest of the ordinary people. But in the midst of that, we are also hoping that whatever negotiations they go into with government or the National Assembly, that will make them call off this strike. We don't want to have a situation where in the next 2 or 3 months again, we see them announcing that they are going on strike again. So what we are saying is that now that they've gone on strike, they have better gotten to a point where they are able to come back with something tangible. I use the word come back home, figuratively now. Get to have a solid agreement with government, not even agreement, maybe some things that are already actionable. Get them to begin to address their immediate concerns and demands before they call off the strike. We want them to call off the strike, But we don't want a situation where, okay, you call it up because, again, the government say they are going to do this or on empty promises or on promises, as it were. And then in the next 3 or 4 months again, we are hearing that NAT will be going on strike again. You know, it has been a pattern, and we don't. It's not good for the people. It's not even good for the nation. So we are hoping that whatever negotiation they are having will resolve the issues of resident doctors permanently.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very well put. I think I'll just leave that at that. More details on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Let's move on now. We also have here Niger, military option open as Tinubu orders more sanctions against individuals and entities. And that is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. So just very quickly, what we have from that is that ahead of tomorrow's emergency meeting of ECOWAS, seeking to restore the out president of Niger Republic, President Bola Tinubu, serving as ECOWAS chairman, has ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria to initiate a slew of financial sanctions targeted at individuals and entities associated with the junta that recently sacked the democratic order in Nigeria. And this is just as the presidency declared yesterday that the ECOWAS mandate and ultimatum is not a Nigerian ultimatum. Very important. What do you think of that statement? What?
Well, it's important that we also lay emphasis on the fact that, look, ECOWAS, yes, has given that ultimatum, not Nigeria. Although the leader of the ECOWAS group at this time is the Nigerian president, so automatically Nigeria takes the lead. And like we've said several, if anything was to happen in terms of military intervention, about 90% of what it will cost in terms of manpower, finance, and all of that would have to come on Nigeria. We are the big brother in the West African sub-region, no doubt about that. But again, I understand why the idea of disruption is not being taken away from the table, even though I know it's going to be extremely difficult for that to be an option because of what the consequences would be. You know, a lot of the northern governors who share border with Niger have met with the president, and I'm sure all of the things they'll be telling me is that, look, you don't want to have a serious food crisis in the north. Because the reality is this, Sandra. The southern part of Niger is where you have about 70 to 80% of their population. The northern part of Niger is complete desert. Desert, you know what you call it, desert, not in open land. So if any crisis was to happen in Niger, Sandra, the immigration crisis would affect Nigeria more. We have the longest borders with them in the whole of West Africa. So, and if anything happens, because again, in trying to understand how Niger is structured, you understand that there's a tendency for civil war to break out of that country if the West African leaders are not careful. Because again, it's a multi-ethnic society, it's a multi-ethnic country. You have Hausas, you have the Tuareg, the Fulani, you have the Shua Arabs. You know, so if we are not careful, ethnic clashes are going to start from that country, and it could lead that country into a form of civil war. And if that happens, Sandra, we are going to have a serious refugee crisis in the north. Already, even without a war, there are a lot of Nigerians living in different parts of the country. We see them, even in the streets of Lagos. Sandra, some of these Okada riders that you see are from Niger. That's when there's no civil war, there's no crisis yet. So if anything happens, we are going to bear the consequences and the brunt of serious immigration. Unfortunately, our borders with Niger are semi-porous. We will not be able to stop a mass exodus of Nigerians, you know, infiltrating into the country. So again, the president has to be careful. He needs to consult widely. I agree that tomorrow, the meeting of tomorrow may produce a situation where we're going to impose more sanctions on the military junta in Niger. But I think that the issue of military intervention may not be taken off the table, but I think it's going to be extremely difficult to carry out any military intervention the way Niger is structured. It's a very delicate situation. I think the government needs to tread carefully. The entire ECOWAS head of state needs to be very, very careful. Again, you have Mali also talking tough. You have Burkina Faso talking tough. You have Guinea talking tough. In fact, as we speak, you don't even know the position of Algeria on this particular issue. They also share a very large border area with Niger on the northern side. And what we hear is that the Nigerian government is not against the coup plot. That's the report we are getting. So it's a very delicate, situation that the Nigerian government needs to be very careful about. the entire ECOWAS needs to be very, very careful about this particular situation.
Thank you very much, Saheed Fuhad. I'll take the riders now. I have here Niger's military junta appoints ex-economy minister as new prime minister. We also have the junta is saying they cannot receive ECOWAS delegation for security reasons. Mali warns of catastrophe if ECOWAS intervenes in Niger. No headway as United States envoy meets coup leaders denied access to Bazoum. Blinken, Wagner taking advantage of instability. And finally, we have ACF, that's Arewa Consultative Forum, urging ECOWAS to lift sanctions and commends Senate opposition of military action. Fuad, is there any one of the writers that you'd like to shed more light on?
I think basically we just have to be very careful. The Wagner, I think the military junta is calling on the Wagner group. We don't know whether they are already
but what do you think of Anthony Blinken's statement that Wagner is taking advantage of the instability to their own for Russia's benefits?
Are they just waking up? When the coup happened in Mali, what was the definite statement that the United States made? Did they take any position? When it happened in Burkina Faso, did Blinken make any definite statement? Or did they take any definite action? When it happened in Guinea, were there any definite actions that they made? Maybe because they have a military base in Niger, and the fact that there's uranium there, because of the interest of the Western powers. That's why they are talking now. But even in that statement, Sandra, there's nothing definite about what they are saying. If you want to condemn it outrightly and let us know what actions you want to take against the Nigerian government. But because they have a military base there, I assume that they are also having some transactions in terms of uranium. You have the U.S. not speaking with both sides of their mouth. In one breath, they are saying, oh, yeah, they are with democracy. On the other hand, we are not going to stop it to the jail. We are hoping that this thing will resolve itself. We are not getting the Western powers to be so definite about their actions and what they want to do in Niger. And that's why Nigeria has to be careful.
Thank you very much.
And we don't play into the international game and then we become a pawn in all of this.
Well, thank you, Fuad. Now let's move on to the last story we're taking from the front page of the Guardian newspaper. We have here, Tinubu moves to end over-reliance on borrowing for public expenditure. And we have riders there. One says, inaugurates committee on fiscal policy, sets 18% tax to GDP target. President knows Nigerians are suffering, says Okonjo Iweala. So what we have is that the president yesterday expressed his administration's commitment to break the cycle of over-reliance on borrowing for public spending and the resultant burden of debt servicing that it places on management of limited government revenues. So, in his inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, which is to be chaired by Taiwo Oyedele, the president charged the committee to improve the country's revenue profile and business environment as the federal government moves to achieve 18% tax to GDP ratio within 3 years. What?
Sandra, again, we're back to the fact that the government, is going to be pushing for serious revenue drive. And it's going to come from taxes. Kenya is facing almost the same thing. And that's why, Kenyans are really on the streets protesting because, again, President Ruto simply said that, look, we have to stop this borrowing. We can't continue to rely on borrowing for our public expenditure. Because, again, we just reviewed it. Our tax to GDP ratio, a lot of problems coming from the fact that about 99% of our revenue is used to service debt. Yes, the tax reforms committee was set up yesterday. One of the interesting things that came out of that is that we have a 400-level UI student as part of that committee. A young lady who, I think they said she held the tax floor in the University of Ibadan, and so she's part of the tax. So that's interesting to see. That's a very good one to see. And of course, if you look through the names of the people in that committee, these are experienced tax consultants, financial consultants, and so one would think that, of course, they are going to be able to give the government the right advice. But, Sandra, there's a difference between increasing taxes and increasing the tax net. We are hoping that we're not going to get to a situation where we're not going to have new set of taxes coming up again because the government needs money. What we are hoping to get is a situation where people who are not captured in the tax net are captured. For people who don't pay taxes, who ordinarily should pay. And I will also open that all of some of the other funny tax waivers privileged Nigerians get from government as a result of political patronage will end. You understand what I'm saying? Because we have a situation in Nigeria where people who should be paying more taxes are the ones getting the waivers. Whereas ordinary Nigerians don't have any means to be able to get any form of waiver. So we are hoping that the tax net will capture that set of Nigerians who should ordinarily be paying more, rather than ordinary Nigerians who should be getting some form of waivers as a form of palliative to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. So, yes.
Hello, Fuhad. Hello? All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, it's better now. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So we're hoping that, yes, we widen the tax net, but it doesn't mean we now have to introduce new taxes that will now.
All right, I think we'll try to reconnect with you. We can, it keeps breaking off. All right, thank you very much, Fuhad. But yes, you are still listening to Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. This is Trends in the Papers. We're currently looking at the president moves to ending over-reliance on borrowing for public expenditure, and the fact that they're looking at setting an 18% tax to GDP target in next 3 years. All right. So while the president, while stressing the significance of its assignment, informed the committee that his administration carries a burden of expectations from citizens who want government to make their lives better. And he said that, acknowledging the country's current international standing on tax, he said the nation is still facing challenges in sectors such as ease of tax payment and its tax to GDP ratio. The aim is to transform the tax system to support sustainable development while achieving a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio within the next 3 years. Without revenue, government cannot provide adequate social services to the people. So that is the stand of the president as regards our fiscal policies. Now, that's all we're taking from the Guardian newspaper. Thank you for staying with us. This is Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. This is Trends in the Papers. We're looking through the front pages of our dailies. We're just done with the Guardian. And now let's move on to the Nation newspaper. And the major headline on the front page of the Nation is federal government begins reform to end 20 trillion naira yearly tax losses. And that is a continuation of the conversation from the Guardian as regards the agenda of setting 18% 3-year tax to GDP target for HANEL. The president saying no more excessive borrowing and stiff penalty likely for tax evasion. Fuhad, just a few minutes so we can move on to other stories.
Yeah, again, we said the reforms will be more about not just looking at the figures, but also humanity, and then of course widening the net. That's it for me. Not introducing new taxes. And at the state and local level, we need to ask ourselves: some of the taxes that you have non-state actors collecting, where does it go to? Because they also talk about remittances. The idea that people collect taxes and don't remit. For example, all this agbero money. It's a form of, whether anybody likes it or not, it's a form of tax or levy. You call it levy, call it tax. But their revenues are supposed to ordinarily go to government. But you have not state actors collecting this money. We don't know where it goes to, the name of being a union. Or, you understand what? I told a number of people, we're talking to a number of journalists, and we said that, look, the monies that go to Agbiros in Lagos, Sandra, ordinarily is enough as a form of revenue to fix our roads in Lagos and even having built new roads. But you have the state government leaving that to non-state actors. And then the Lagos state government will tell you that, they still have to borrow. That money is there. If the government can harness it and be prudent about it to maintain roads in Lagos and even build new ones, the money that go to these hospitals every month, every day. So that is also what the tax reforms idea should be about. How do you have situations where non-state actors are the ones collecting money and living larger than lives than the ordinary people, where the monies are supposed to go to government to better the lives of the people?
Thank you very much, Fuhad. Well, the fact that Nigeria loses 20 trillion naira yearly to tax gaps, that says a lot, especially from what you have just, highlighted. The fact that, a state like Lagos State, so many opportunities, so many what's yes, so many opportunities to actually get some extra funds. But then, if we get everyone that needs to pay their taxes to pay, we would not be where we are. So we think the gap is somewhere in the region of 20 trillion. That is coming from the committee chairman. That's the newly inaugurated fiscal presidential committee on fiscal policy. The more details of that on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. Let's keep moving now. We also have on the front page here, CBN hits Niger rep junta with sanctions. ACF opposes economic blockade. Military denies top US diplomat as access. Just as we mentioned earlier, the president directed the CBN to implement a set of new financial sanctions on the Niger Republic's junta as well as their associates. All right, and more details of that on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. Now we also have here job racketeering victims at House of Reps, and that is on page 6 of the Nation. All right, so just very quickly, let's see what we have from that particular story. 2 men claiming to be victims of job racketeering at the Federal Character Commission told the House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating illegal employment rings in federal agencies to prevail on the FCC to give them the jobs that they paid for. They claimed that there was nothing wrong in their action. What? The Federal Character Commission is allegedly collecting money
a lot is happening. There's a back and forth between I think the DG, a particular woman. I don't have her name on my head now. But she had to swear by the Quran that she never told our officials to collect money on her behalf. Because the back and forth is that the official is saying they have been collecting money from people and that they have remitted, I think, some millions of naira to our boss, to his boss, sorry, in the guise of providing jobs for people. Although the issue of job racketeering at the FCC is not a new story. It's been there because, of course, they are the ones, who try to get jobs for people and all of that. And now that we have 2 people who have said they paid, it makes the job easy, Sandra.
Yeah.
Who did you pay to? And what is the evidence of payment? You were told you were going to give a job, you paid. At least you must have somebody you paid to, and there must be evidence. But you understand? But I'm hoping that it will not be, we paid in cash, so there's no evidence. But again, these are things that happen. Job racketeering is not new, especially when it comes to government jobs. You have even situations where people are giving slots and they sell it. Sandra, you are got any slot that you're convert out? I'm telling you.
For job. Wow.
For jobs, yes. This idea of slots. Oh, they're giving one senator 2 slots, and they're giving one else. Say the way it is now, Sandra. There's no need to. It's a thing that everybody knows. They are one over. They have gotten 2 slots, and at the end of the day, we see situations where some of these people even sell their slots. You take money, they sell it. They're, okay, you want job, go and bring this amount of money, or maybe they are 8. Take advantage of those things and get money from people to get these jobs. Again, it's about reforming our ways of doing things, reforming our minds. The corruption is endemic, and if we don't fight corruption, Sandra, we have no headway. We're not going to make any progress.
One of the victims, let me call it victim, I guess, is saying that
it's a victim, yeah.
It's saying that he graduated for 11 years without a job, saw an opportunity to secure one. There's a lot of details on
and
how he paid the money into Haruna Kolo, a certain Haruna Kolo account. But because he needed evidence of payment and assurance of getting the job, he said he knows the name of the person, who he paid the money.
Into Haruna Kolo's account. And they should dig into Haruna Kolo's account now and drag him out.
That's just it.
I'm sure it's a staff or maybe an agent.
The Haruna Kolo name is all over the the Haruna Kolo. And so, anyways, apparently they got a posting letter. He was even paid for January. This is interesting. He said he was paid his first salary in January, and then the appointment letters was taken somewhere. There's a WhatsApp group. There's a lot of
he was paid.
They said they told me that my posting letter will be ready within 2 weeks, and I got my
but
first.
It was paid without any posting letter.
And I got my first salary in January 2023, 5 months after my enrollment into the EPIS.
And so he's been employed. Has he not been employed?
But
he already got the job now.
So But the issue here now is the director collected photocopies of their appointment letter that he wanted to get clearance from the chairman. And in July, they got a message from the HR department to come with their credentials. And upon arrival, they were faced with a committee that is investigating.
How did you get this job?
Yes. That's interesting. Well, I wish you both of them all the best.
Well, it's good that the IRS is digging into this. But I also think that, when we have probes like this going on at National Assembly, we should have EFCC officials, or ICPC officials sitting along with the members to take notes, because it's important that, you don't just probe. The relevant authorities need to also dig into it and prosecute whoever is found culpable.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on now. Still on the front page of the Nation newspaper, above the masthead, we have APC defends president's choice of ministers, and that is on page 2 of the Nation. And we have a rider there that says Southeast seeks more slots. Now, let's move on now to the Southeast Senate caucus has urged President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to appoint 2 more ministers from the zone. They insist that the 2 additional slots would make for equity, fairness, and justice in the representation of all geopolitical zones in the present administration at the center. This demand was contained in a motion moved by Senator Tony Nwoye of Labour Party Anambra North on Monday night. It was co-sponsored by the remaining 14 senators from the Southeast. And Nwoye, in his lead debate, complained that the Southeast had the lowest ministerial representation among those nominated by the president, with only 5. And they are Dr. Uju Kennedy Ohane Anambra, Nkiru Onyejocha Abia, Uche Naji Enugu, Senator Dave Umahi Ebonyi, and Doris Uzuka from Imo. Nwoye is insisting that President Tinubu's action violated Section 5A and B, as well as Section 4.1 of the Federal Character Commission Act laws of the Federation, 2004. There's a lot of conversation there. Said underrepresentation of the Southeast in the present government would not make for national unity and loyalty, as enshrined in Section 14.3 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended. So he has called on the Senate to prevail on the president to pick at least 2 additional ministers from the Southeast to balance the nation's geopolitical representation in this administration. And that, it's a whole of conversations there. More details. Well, the Senate President responded. All right. The Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, interrupted Nwoye during his lead debate, and he promised that the leadership of the Senate will take up the matter with the President as soon as possible. Fuhad, there you have it. The Southeast Senate is saying they're not. The Southeast is not, represented enough. We have just 5, nominees from the Southeast, and they are requesting for 2 more in order for there to be equity, fairness, and goodwill.
I agree, Sandra. You give the Northwest 10 ministers. The Southwest got 9. And then 5 to the Southeast. That calls to the issue of equity and fairness, if you understand what I'm saying. Plus, again, if we were to go by the number of states as stipulated by the Constitution, the Northwest has 7 states, right? And so if you give them 7 ministers, and then you decide to take 1 from that geopolitical zone, that makes it 8. But you're giving them 10. And then the Southeast.
Yes, but for the conversation has always been that all of these things has to do with reward or compensation for reward and all of that.
But even if you are going to reward and compensate, we have to see some level of fairness in the reward system. When reward becomes lopsided, it becomes a problem, and that's why you keep having agitations. That's what I'm saying. You can't just give the Northwest everything. And it's not key. I'm not balancing it by 5 states. Then
Fuad,
one,
maybe can you please
political
move?
zone.
Hello, can you please move a bit? I didn't.
Hello?
We can't. Okay, it's better now. Thank you. All right. Maybe we should try to just reconnect then. I guess it's better that way. Well, more details of that on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. APC defends president's choice of ministers. Let's see, if we can get more details on that whilst we try to reconnect with Saheed Fuhad. The presidency said the minister designate will undergo induction before they are sworn in. But then, as I mentioned earlier, the Senate president said that the leadership of the Senate will take up the matter with the president as soon as possible. Let's move on now to other stories still on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Fountain of Life Pastor Odukoya dies at 67. Very, very sad news that rolled in yesterday evening. The senior pastor of Fountain of Life Church at Ilukpeju in Lagos, Pastor Taiwo Odukoya, has died. The church confirmed his demise on its official Facebook page and was said to have died on Monday, August 7, in the United States of America. He was 67. All right, and there have been, messages coming in from the president, from the Lagos state government, as regards and commiserating with the family of the deceased. More details of that on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all we can take from the Nation newspaper. This is still trends in the papers on mainland 98.3 FM. And we're looking through major trending stories on the front pages of the dailies. Now we're moving on to Vanguard newspaper. And the major headline there says, federal government's reliance on borrowing must end, says Tinubu. And the writer says, promises to end Nigeria's over-reliance on loans, sets 18% tax to GDP target in 3 years, inaugurates Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, subsidy removal raises Nigeria's revenue to GDP by 2%. That's coming from World Bank now. And that story is on page 5. We have had a discussion on this and from the previous 2 papers. So we'll move on now. We also have here on the front page of Vanguard newspaper, Tinubu committed to improving citizens' welfare, and that is coming from the WTO, World Trade Organization, DG Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. The story is on page 25 of Vanguard newspaper, and what we have, the writers to that says, we'll do our best to support Nigeria as she meets with the president in Aso Rock. So, the DG of World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said yesterday that President Bola Tinubu was committed to improving the lives of Nigerians. She also said, as the person at the helm of the WHO, WTO, she would, alongside her team, do her best to support Nigeria at this difficult time. And just as mentioned earlier, she was at the presidential villa yesterday. She said that they're contemplating a grassroots program that could put in place to help the young people as well as women. She also said the WTO would look at the kind of assistance it could give to the people on agriculture, textile, and even in establishing pharmaceutical industry. For what? There has always been the conversation around the fact that, the DG of the WTO is a Nigerian, so we should enjoy some sort of palliative.
Opportunities. Well, not palliatives.
I use that word intentionally, just for you.
No, I don't like that word anyway.
All right, yeah, but a lot of opportunities. Yes.
But there are things that we can, of course, now we have a
Enjoy.
Nigerian head in that institution, and so we can enjoy and take advantage of the fact that we have a Nigerian. So one will wait to see what will come out of that. But she has met with the president, which means there's a good working relationship, between them. We're also hoping that we need to take advantage of additional at the African Development Bank. So which means we can always take advantage of Nigerians heading those institutions. But it's beyond rhetoric, Sandra. It's beyond just making statements. Because again, if Okonjo-Iweala is telling us that the president is committed to the interest of the people, is it about his policies or about the fact that he just met with the president and the president told her You understand what I'm saying? I met with the president, and then when you are talking to president, you say, "Oh, the
What
president is
informed
committed to
this
the welfare."
statement of saying
And
that the
that
president?
statement, is it after reviewing the policies of the president, or the fact that, well, I met with the president and he told me he's committed? And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go with the statements of any president. I'm going to be looking at policy. It is the policy of the president that will determine whether he's committed to the welfare of the people or not. But again, it's good that they are meeting, and of course there are plans in place to help Nigerians, when it comes to, improving the loss of Nigerians when it comes to their living standard. That's okay to see. But I think it's just beyond mere words and assurance. It has to be about good policy, and that will transform and better the lives of the Nigerian people.
Thank you very much, Fuhad. The more details of that on page 25 of Vanguard newspaper. Now I have here on still on the front page of Vanguard, Senate may re-invite El Rufai to other ministerial nominees, says spokesman. So, Senate spokesman Yemi Adaramodu said yesterday that the Red Chamber may re-invite the three ministerial nominees yet to be confirmed for rescreening. And they are Kaduna State Governor Nasir El Rufai, Delta State nominee Stella, former Kaduna State Governor, thank you very much, former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El Rufai, Delta State nominee Stella Okotete, and Taraba State nominee Abubakar Danladi, citing security reasons. That was the reason that they were not, confirmed earlier.
Confirmed.
Yes. So asking whether the Senate will still confirm those yet to be confirmed, the Senate spokesman said the question raised about them is an ongoing issue. So once the Senate is satisfied, definitely we need to invite them to the chamber for the reconfirmation and rescreening. Then we'll do that. If security is not satisfied, Senate cannot be satisfied. It depends on what security agencies and the person that nominates them say. Fuhad.
Well, again, like I said, I think yesterday, one would have thought that before their first appearance at the floor of the Senate, these security checks would have been completed.
Thank you.
So there would, you understand, how do you make people appear and then you now go back to, firing them for security screening and all of that? Because one would have thought that before they appear before the Senate, all necessary security checks and screening would have been completed. But now there's this back and forth. They have to have a second appearance. Again, that's speculated because Adaramodu is not saying, with emphasis that would happen. But again, we'll have to see what happens. But again, that's the fact that we're not really a process-driven people. Ordinarily, all of the security checks would have been completed before you allow nominees to appear before the Senate. And that was why we said the entire screening was a form of charade. It was just complete joke. Because again, somebody had not completed all the necessary security checks, and they were appearing before the Senate. So what was the screening about in the first place? But again, it's left for the Senate to find a way to resolve all of this. Because there's a petition against El Rufai. A serious petition concerning security and some of his positions in the past. When it came to national security, some of his stance on religion and all of that. The other quoted, I think it's on TV, her credentials. There are questions as to whether she forged her documents or not. And then the other man from Taraba, it's about the Supreme Court judgment that are banned him from, holding any public office for the next 10 years. So I thought that all of that should have been sorted before any of these people appeared before the Senate. But we'll see how they're going to resolve that. But Sandra, the other issue that we're talking about, just 30 seconds, I think the president needs to create some level of equity and fairness. Yes, we know that ministerial appointments in Nigeria is purely a form of political patronage and reward system. But even in a reward system, we should see elements of fairness and equity. It is wrong to just give the Southeast 5 ministers. In the minimum, it should be 6, at least 1 additional one from that geopolitical zone. If you have 10 from the Northwest when they have 7 states, then that's the problem with equity, fairness, and justice that we have been talking about.
All right, thank you very much. Well, just to mention, for avoidance of doubt, the Senate has so far approved and confirmed the nomination of 45 out of 48 ministerial nominees that have been sent by the president. So others are still waiting for security clearance.
3.
Yes. Okay. Well, more details of that on page 9 of Vanguard newspaper. We also have here Edo PDP to wade into Obaseki Shaibu rift. Interesting things happening in Edo State between the governor and his deputy. But then the Edo State chapter of the PDP said it would wade into the crisis, noting that the rift between them was expected in politics. And so it's normal. So there's no cause for alarm, as the leaders will wade into it and see what they can do.
There's problem with there's serious cause for alarm.
There's no problem. Why are you helping the bereaved to be bereaved?
I'm telling you that there's serious cause for alarm. You know, if a governor is saying that my deputy did not have the caustic to come and inform me about his governorship ambition, I don't know about it. You know, and the deputy governor is already running to court to save him from impeachment, and he said there's no cause for alarm. The alarm is already ringing.
Well, more details of that on page 7 of Vanguard newspaper, and that's all we can take for this morning. The major headline on the front page of Daily Sun is Nigerians to pay more tax. That's what they wrote as the major headline. And the writer says, as federal
it should
government,
not be about paying more.
More
Nigerians should be captured, not paying more.
That's why I had to quickly read
it
that.
It should not kill us. So. You know, there's a difference between paying more and having more people to pay.
Yes.
There are two different things. So paying more is different from having more people to pay.
Increasing tax versus increasing tax net. That's
tax net. Widening the tax net. It's different from increasing taxes.
So more Nigerians should pay tax rather than the few Nigerians that are paying tax overburdening them.
Without paying more.
Yes, I understand that.
God bless you, Sandra. You don't get them now.
Well, that's all for this morning on Trends in the Papers. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back by 8:40 for Mainland Focus, where you, as our dear listener, get to be a part of the conversation. So stay with us. This is Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Mobola Sandra, and I have Fuhad Saheed via the phone line. We'll be right back.